everyone, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Mina and I love to craft. I come out with a new video every week, so please make sure to subscribe. This week I wanted to talk about alterations and some simple sewing tips. So I personally love to buy a lot of vintage clothing, so knowing how to alter your own clothes is very handy. Also, with this time being from home a lot more, if I do buy a garment online, I try to buy a few sizes up so I can bring it in where I need to. So let me show you some basic tips I learned in this process. So this is the first dress I'm going to be altering today. It fits me pretty well. The fabric is very thin and it's mesh, so I don't want to be working with it too much because it's very slippery, but I do want to bring it in on the back just to make it more cinched around the waist. I'll also be adding some thread loops to this dress as well. I love this dress, it's super cute, and honestly it fits me pretty well. My only issue with it is that sometimes when I'm like bending down to pick something up, the straps of the dress kind of fall off, so I'm just going to bring in the straps up a little bit. This next dress is super cute and comfortable. I'm going to be keeping that super flattering flare A shape that the dress has. I'm only going to be bringing it up in the top. This next dress was super short on the model, and so I got the largest size they had, and so I'm definitely going to have to bring this in up towards the neckline. And this fabric is actually very delicate, so I'll be adding some belt loops to this dress. This is the last dress. This is a vintage dress, and it fits me pretty well, but I do want to cinch it in a little bit more at the waist. It does have these nifty ties in the back, but they don't quite go as far as I need them to. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So I used to do alterations without a dress form. You don't need a dress form, but it is a lot easier. So luckily the dress form I have is pretty much close to my actual measurement, so that is what I'll be using today. And as always, a good reminder is to always put your garments inside out so that your stitches are nice and seamless. I'm using these handy little clips here, and I'm marking where I want to put my seam with some sewer's chalk. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through my sewing machine, sewing onto those chalk lines. And I'm going very slowly because the fabric is very thick and I just want to make sure not to break my needle. I checked to see if both sides are even, and now I'm going to trim off the excess. I'm using a rotary cutter, and if you have a serger machine, this is where you'd want to use it because now I do have raw exposed edges, and to make sure those don't run through a wash, you just want to finish off your seams with a serger. I don't have one, so I'm just going to be using a zigzag stitch and it will work just as well. This next dress already had some darts in it, which is very helpful for keeping the shape, so I'm just going to bring it in all along the middle. I'm using some pins here because the fabric was quite thin, but I always prefer to use the clips when I can. And don't do what I'm doing in this video. You want to make sure that you're not sewing on top of the needles. Always remove your needles. I was not paying attention here and it definitely made the process a little bit harder. So next up is I'm going to pin in the neckline here, and the fabric up here is quite thick, so I feel pretty confident about bringing it in up at the top. Next, I'm going to add these dress loops, which if you own any vintage dresses, you've probably seen this belt loop here. I learned this super cool hack on how to make these. I'll put the person's YouTube link down below, but it's very simple and it looks really nice, so let me show you how I did it. So I'm taking some pink thread, I'm matching it as closely as I can to the dress, and I'm wrapping it around a notebook 6 times. You'll then want to remove your string from the notebook and kind of twist it together until you get one long thicker strand. You'll want to tie a knot at the end and at the top of your strand. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure your sewing machine is set to a zigzag stitch, and you're going to keep the strand taut and you're going to run it through the machine. Essentially what's going to happen is the zigzag stitch is going to, in a sense, braid all the strands together, making one long, thick, uniform strand. This hack is so genius, so again, definitely check out the YouTube channel I'm linking down below. That's where I first saw this trick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little loop out of this strand. I'm going to have the loop facing towards the back, so refer to that diagram from before. And I'm going to zigzag stitch a lot of times where the two pieces of the thread meet. This will just keep it very secure inside the dress. So I think I did this about 3 times. The end result looks something like this. You can clean it up with a little pair of sewing scissors. And again, this dress is quite thin, it's quite see-through, so I'm just going to take it in a little bit on the back, and I'm actually going to be adding some ribbon loops. I feel like the thread might be too thin for this thin of a fabric, so I'll be adding some physical ribbon belt loops. So this is a quick diagram. You'll first want to use a zigzag stitch to sew the bottom, front, and end of the ribbon like so. And then you'll want to kind of press it down and add another zigzag stitch to the top end and the bottom end, making it very secure in your garment. The end result looks something like this. How thick or thin you want to make it is totally up to you. I found a ribbon that I was going to use and I just tested it to make sure it would fit through this loop. This is what the other side looks like. So it's essentially kind of like a half donut that you sew in and then you sew on top just to solidify it. This dress was the easiest to do. I ended up just cutting the strands and singeing them with my candle just to make sure that they didn't run. Next, I tied a knot in the back and it actually ended up working perfectly, so this one was very easy. Now time for the big reveal. Oh, I can already feel this feels just so much better. It feels very snug and I love the way it feels. This dress looks so much better from the front. It's just much more fitted. The back could use a little bit of love, but I'm really happy with how the front came out. And the neckline feels really good. This one doesn't look too different, but it just feels a lot better. It feels better to have the fabric really hugging me. And this dress, the tie worked perfectly. And the black one is still kind of loose, but I kind of like it that way. It gives it a nice relaxed fit. And that wraps up today's altering. I'll definitely be altering some more dresses. I have a whole bag of vintage clothes that I need to get through, so please follow along if you're interested in more sewing tips. And if you have any sewing or altering tips, please share them down below. I'm always learning new things about sewing, so please share any wisdom you have. And yeah, thanks so much for watching.